Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. Well, I don't know what happened, but we got it now. Anyway, folks, we're going to have a great show for you today. Welcome aboard. First in the house, AVQ, El Senor Michael Rudnin from where again? From Brooklyn, New York. We also have in the house with us, we've got Yvette Avery Herod from Atlanta, Georgia. We also have in the house Eric Hayes from Kingwood, Atascocita. We've got Mayor May Wood from Long Beach, California. And I missed our Substack beginning, so I have to wait for more to come in so that I can actually see all the folks that are coming in via Substack. Anyway, folks, we're going to have a great program for you today. How's everybody doing? Michael Rudnin says, let's say, Inc. from Inc. magazine, it says, tariff update. A 3-judge panel could stop Trump's trade war. Trump trade war faces 7 legal challenges as businesses states argues his tariffs exceeded his power, declaring that the United States' huge and long-running trade deficits add up to a national emergency. Trump invoked the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act and rolled out 10% tariffs on many countries. He imposed higher up to 50% reciprocal tariffs on countries that sold more goods to the United States than the U.S. sold to them, as if it's their fault, right? Jeffrey Schwab, senior counsel and director of litigation at the nonprofit Liberty Justice Center, said the president is exceeding the act's authority, and that attitude doesn't actually say anything about giving the president the power to tariff. The statute doesn't say the word tariff. Trump's emergency is a figment of his own imagination. Trade deficits, which have persisted for decades without causing economic harm, are not an emergency. Watch the right-wing bubble for pearl clutching about activist judges while saying an emergency is what Trump says it is. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? It makes absolutely no sense. But again, this is Trump we're talking about. This is Donald Trump we're talking about. Anyway, folks, how are my people doing? We have in the house as well, let's see, Lee Grant from Montgomery County. How are you doing today? Anyway, folks, I want to, before we get started, I don't know how many of you watched the hearings today for birthright citizenship. It really wasn't about birthright citizenship. It was about whether a judge has the ability to stop one of the president's CEOs or have one of a district judge extend to the entire country his ruling. And, that's pretty much what it was all about. But again, the underlying case is, in fact, birthright citizenship. Of course, the 14th Amendment gave that. That should be a given. But as you know, that is not what always occurs. Anyway, before getting started, the first thing I'm going to do is play a interview that I had yesterday on WPFW in Washington, D.C. We covered the topic about the Afrikaners. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the program with that, and then we'll move on from there. Here we go.
Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here with you. Welcome to another episode of What's at Stake on this wonderful Wednesday morning. Happy to join you once a month here. As you all know, my standard stock and trade is in the political realm. And so we're very fortunate to have with us a brother. He and I have done a lot of work together over the years, a lot of cross broadcasting and simulcasting. He's an author and a blogger, hosts his own show. He'll tell us about that. He's a political activist himself. So first, let's get an update on everything that our dear brother Egberto Willies is up to. My brother, how are you?
Man, it's a pleasure and an honor to be with you as usual, Rev. Last time I saw you, I think it was in either Chicago or Philadelphia at the Netroots Nation. And as usual, we had our great conversations and great interview where you laid out the land. I think you actually called the election as we spoke a few months ago, unfortunately, but you did.
Well, actually, I think we were at Netroots this last summer in Baltimore.
Actually, you're right. It is in Baltimore. Yes.
Right. And we kind of were ahead of the curve.
Yes.
On Kamala possibly being the nominee, as well as one of my predictions didn't come true because, as I said very prominently, I felt there should have been two women on the ticket.
Yes, I remember that.
But like I said, if we're gonna go out in flames. But brother, it's good to see you. First of all, tell everybody about what you're up to these days and where they can find you and keep up with you. Let's get that at the outset.
Well, thank you so kindly. As you guys, I am actually the host of Politics Done Right on KPFT 90.1 FM in Houston. And we also simulcast over at Substack under Egberto Off the Record and throughout YouTube and these other networks. So you can find me easily by simply going to politicsdoneright.com. Politicsdoneright.com is where you can find what I do. I'm a political activist and also an unabashed progressive host. So what we do is try to let people know the current state of the nation and what we as progressives need to do to reclaim what is justifiably ours.
Yeah, that's very, very important. So, man, so much going on in the news. Now, help us to understand what is going on with these refugees from apartheid South Africa. I know you've been covering that.
Yes, I am. I think in general, progressives should make this a meme, a necessary meme. Because what we have is that first of all, the president of South Africa made it clear that there is no genocide going on in South Africa. There is no attack on white people going on in South Africa. In fact, what's going on in South Africa is the attempt at getting some sort of equity. 7% of 70% of the land in South Africa is controlled by the white minority. When there is a 93% Black majority in the country, we understand that the Afrikaners came from Holland and other places to dominate the country, where they took things over. They threw Black folks in the Bantustan. So that if there were anyone that could call themselves refugees at any time, would have been the actual residents of South Africa. Now, what occurred is that because there is a law that was passed that said lands that are deemed not used and lands that are deemed necessary for, like we would use eminent domain here in the United States, would be reclaimed. And in very few instances would the owners of that land not be compensated. Well, many have used that as an excuse to say there is an attack on the white farmer, which is completely false. Donald Trump, receiving his information from Elon Musk, who is a South African himself, believed on what they were saying and opened, even as he has closed America accepting refugees from any other country, specifically any other country of color. He has made exceptions for the Afrikaners, which are the white African descendants of the Dutch and others. Now, interestingly, not only is he allowing them to come here, let's remember, I did an image between how the Haitians were treated and how the South Africans were treated. The South Africans got a chartered jet that flew to South Africa to pick them up, bring them to Dallas, right there in your part of the country, give them a ceremony, put them up, pay them, help them find jobs, help them find provide them with diapers and all the necessary things as any humane country would do. So the reality is, I am not fighting or concerned about United States doing a good thing for people who deem themselves refugees. But if they can get that kind of treatment when we know for a fact that they are in fact not refugees, why do we treat the people south of the border the way that we do? Why do we have men on horses whipping the Asians like slaves? Why do we treat and discard these people like they are not human beings? Why do the Governor Abbott of Texas put razor sharp wire along the Rio Grande to go ahead and harm these people? It is clear. And for everybody who supports Donald Trump, and specifically for people of color who support Donald Trump, a man who has proven that he thinks there are different degradations of humanity, how can you support something like that?
Right. No, that's a very relevant question. You mentioned Elon Musk too. Obviously, this is some type of a quid pro quo for Elon Musk's investment in his campaign. Elon Musk and his family being South African. That exposes what's really going on here, and the double standard, the treatment of other immigrants in this country. They're kicking people out. They've snatched up a few people who are legitimately here. They've said they want to come after people who are illegal, but Egberto, they've kicked a few people out of this country who come from south of the border, who are here legitimately. And a few people also, a good friend of mine, Mohsen Mawadi, who is here legally, a Palestinian, was detained for about 2 weeks himself. They finally released him. So they're snatching all these other folks up, and they've not done anything, including ones who are here rightfully and legally, right?
Yeah, a personal story. I am originally from Panama, and I have I'm a naturalized American citizen. I have a passport that shows that I'm a U.S. citizen, and I have, of course, it tells you what's the country of your birth. I have refrained from traveling outside of the country because I've heard too many stories of other people that are naturalized citizens coming into the country and taken aside, thrown into a room, and done massive interrogations on them. Now, as you know, both you and I, we do this type of politics. We do this type of programming. We do this type of hosting. What do you think's going to happen if I travel out of the country and come back? And even as they let me in, don't you think I'll be harassed?
Yeah. You're right. Brother, you better not. You better not do that in your position. How many South African, and I dread even calling them that, but how many Afrikaner, so to speak, refugees are we talking about?
Well, the first plane load was, I think, 57 refugees, but there are 8,000 in South Africa right now that are seeking qualification or have been qualified to come to the United States. So the reality is we don't know the exact number, but we know 8,000 have already applied to the United States. And you can almost be guaranteed that these 8,000 people that are coming here are not people of best repute. Donald Trump always says, we get your criminals, we get, and, put all these. I can almost guarantee you without any research that the people who are going to leave South Africa are the people of less repute, if you will, than the average white South African, because the average white South African is living very well. They're living much better than the average Black South African, even as the country apartheid has gone. They own 70% of the land. They own most of the resources of production. So what the reality is that it is a fraud that we're bringing these people in as refugees. But what's a bigger fraud is the amount of taxpayer dollars used to bring them in, even as Doge is talking about cutting back, even as Doge is talking about the burden the refugees from the south of the border are bringing to America, when we are flying planes to South Africa and as we repatriate these people here, we're providing them with the welfare that the people south of the border are not getting, nor are they asking for.
Where are they going? Where are they going to be living? Do we know? Just wherever they can?
No. Well, actually, they'll be placed around the United States. But right now, there's a particular church that was supposed to assist with it. And they got so much flack that they decided we better back out of this because this is really an unfair situation. So I am not sure exactly who is going to help them right now, but they have the most important help that they need right now. And that is Donald Trump and Elon Musk using our taxpayer dollars to do whatever it takes to make sure they're comfortable and well taken care of.
Yeah, this is something else. I'm hard pressed to remember when other nations in Africa decolonized, where there was sort of an airlift or former folks this late in the game. I mean, we're 30 years out from democratic elections.
Yes.
Not to mention, we're talking about countries that were colonized by the countries they were colonized by. So, if they're going to go somewhere, why not go to England or UK, or some of them they're Dutch.
Right.
Those countries on it. That's interesting that they're not even asking for those. They're not inviting those people to come back. What does the United States have to do with finding housing and a place for people like that?
This is a DEI. This is a DEI play. It's important to. I think you brought up that excellent point, right? Why aren't they going back to Germany? Why aren't they going back to Great Britain? Why aren't they going back to Holland? Right, to the Netherlands. Why? Because they are. This has nothing to do with refugee status. This is a DEI play that we are making here. We are attempting to make America wider. That's why Donald Trump brought up the birth issue, because he believed most of the people that would take advantage of the birth issue would be the particular people of the right hue. That is why he got rid of the Library of Congress person, because they want to make sure that America is focused on this DEI thing. They want to make it seem like the people of color are harming white people. That is what they have to get into the psyche of Americans to be able to do the things that they want to do. Absent that, guess what's going to happen? Does Bacon Rebellion ring a bell?
Yeah.
Okay. So the idea is you have to make sure and keep that friction in society. That's why DEI is strong. I've heard people talk about DEI that were once NAACP members.
Yeah. That's right. That's very significant. Caller, you're on the air with Egberto Willies on What's at Stake.
This is Rick calling you long distance from Germany, Mark. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah. Hey, Rick, how you doing, man? I'm good. We can hear you. Yes, sir.
Still alive after 20 years of CIA intestinal parasites. I remember in 1984, there was a book released by an anthropologist, Vincent Crapanzano, and the title of that book was Waiting, the Whites of South Africa. And shortly after the release of that book, during the Reagan-Bush years, South Africans were brought into America and resettled not only in Texas, but in parts of Arizona. And they knew that the writing was on the wall, that if blacks took over South Africa, what the wicked ones did to the blacks there would be repaid sooner or later. So they got out of Dodge. And I knew it was only a matter of time before a crazy Republican came to power that more South Africans would find their way into America. I'm done, fellas.
So you sharing with us some history I was not aware of. So some of them have been brought here in the past during the Reagan-Bush period. Did you know that, Egberto?
Yeah, it was during the time when Reagan was instituting this policy called constructive engagement. While Pan-Africa and all these other guys were trying to get rid of South Africa, get rid of apartheid at all costs, we were in a period where Reagan wanted to stay engaged with the white South African government of both I believe it was, and others. And they call it that engagement. And yes, a lot of South Africans move over then. But I want to point out something. The South African Constitution is a much better constitution than ours in that it is a humane document and not a capital document. And as a humane document, those white people in South Africa, they've suffered no penalties for the ills they imposed on black people. In other words, in fact, they had their reconciliation councils, etc., where they got together and forgave not forgave each other. The black folks forgave what the Afrikaners did to them, etc. So it's important for us to understand that this fallacy that Donald Trump tries to put out there, that the black folks now are attempting to harm these benevolent Afrikaners, the people who once had them on Bantustans and all these different, on all the Badlands. That never happened. Nelson Mandela ought to be, and Sikh, I can't remember his name, have to be given great credit for having the dignity and the humanity not to turn the other, not to pull an eye for an eye, but to actually say, you know what, we're not going to keep the violence going. We are going to do the right thing. The thing that you guys didn't do, we'll do. And that is think humanity first.
So speaking of constructive engagement, that was taking place at the time I was an 18-year-old student at Georgetown. And that's where I began my journalism career in Washington, writing for the Georgetown student newspaper, The Hoya, and writing stories every day against constructive engagement. And we ultimately closed university to get it down, protested and shut down university to get it to divest from South Africa. But it was that Reagan administration that maintained that policy. And, you know, I was in the School of Foreign Service, Egberto, at Georgetown. And whenever Reagan officials would come and speak, particularly, you remember his name, the Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs in the Reagan administration was Chester Crocker.
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't remember the name. Yeah,
that's Crocker. So he came to speak. Whenever he would show up, and it was the School of Foreign Service at Georgetown has a very close relationship with the diplomatic corps and the Foreign Service environment community. And we would sing, Hugh Massacre, bring back Nelson Mandela. We would sing it and drown out his speech and then go to jail and then sing it in jail. But no, you're absolutely right in terms of that history and what that meant. So, folks, this is something that we ought to be concerned about as the double standard happens to our other family from the global South in particular. Any other comments? 202-588-0893 for comments on this topic. Want to shift, though, because I see you've also been covering. See, so many things aren't getting coverage. Folks want to talk about the plane. That's what the dude you say on the show. And Trump's plane, which obviously, Egberto, raises questions about emoluments. Let's just touch on that briefly. Is this not evidence that there are literally, as Kamala Harris said, there would be no guardrails? Even the Constitution is being rendered obsolete. No other president has done that. You can't just go get a new plane from a whole nother country as a gift and start flying that all over the place as president, right? You're not supposed to be able to do that. That's the emoluments clause.
And the plane is already there. And I think it's right here in San Antonio. And it's here. And you're right. It is. Nobody's enforcing the Constitution. At this point in time, Donald Trump should have already been impeached for, again, violating the Constitution.
We've got another caller on the line for Egberto Willies. Caller, go right ahead.
Hello.
Yes, hello. You're on the air.
Am I the one?
Yes, you are.
Am I the one? Okay. It's refreshing to have these young people, Africans from the Western Hemisphere. I wonder if they could help us come up with somebody like Middleton that is linking us here in the Western Hemisphere with African scholars around the world to highlight our contribution to world civilization. Secondly, it's also refreshing too that young people like Ibrahim Traore is electrifying Africans on the continent. If we can get some intelligent leaders like the two of you to link up with those ones on the African continent so that we can actually come together and really bring true civilization and true freedom to humanity globally.
Yes, sir. Yeah, well, I agree. I think that's what our brother Egberto and I have been doing and will continue to do. And I was a student of Listerville Middleton's from a distance. And, you know, Listerville did a lot to bring the great scholars like Sheikh Anta Diop and John Henry Clark and Dr. Yosef Ben Yakin and Shashi McIntyre to the airwaves. And many of us continued in that vein. So I appreciate you, caller. That's what we've got to continue to do. And we want to lift up our contributions to the diaspora. I want to come back to that, but first, I want to just go to one other story as we look at so many things that are being covered and are not being covered. Egberto, you are covering and are emphatic in your coverage that they're the Trump administration plans to take away our health insurance, our Medicaid. No one else is talking about that or covering that. Talk to us about that, if you would.
Yeah, and that is what the smoke and mirrors are all about with Donald Trump. The plane is a smoke and mirrors. The drug deal that he claimed to have that really isn't a drug deal at all. It's all to get people away from the real subject at hand, and that is to since they couldn't get the Affordable Care Act dismembered because of McCain back during the first Trump administration, they're doing it in a backdoor fashion because they know Americans want to have at least the Affordable Care Act. And note what I said, at least the Affordable Care Act. What we really need is a Medicare for all system. But right now, nobody wants to put that in the forefront. Yesterday, Tuesday, the Ways and Means Committee and other committees at the same time were discussing all these cuts that were going to be made to Medicaid, but they didn't want anybody following it on C-SPAN or whatever. So what we had the airplane story, and we had the little drug story, and we had all these other stories. And if you watch TV yesterday, whether it's be CNN, MSNBC, or any of the others, the only story you saw was that sexy story about that Qatari plane sitting on the tarmac, and why we had Democratic Congress people talking about the emoluments clause and talking about which they should. I'm not saying they shouldn't. But while they're talking about that is taking up airtime. There's a finite amount of time in that people have that people are watching TV. That time should be used to tell folks your Medicare, your father's Medicare, your aunt's who is in the nursing homes, Medicaid, your family who lives in rural area, those hospitals will be closing. You cannot allow this to occur. You cannot give a free pass to your congressperson, whether Republican or Democrat, to allow this to happen. When that law is passed, it's just that, passed. And at that point, there's little you can do until God knows when to go ahead and recover what you would have lost. The emoluments clause can be handled anytime. We can handle that after the budget has been passed. But we can't. But if we worry about something right now and not what's occurring with your healthcare, it is too late. Look, I want to interject with this. I'm glad that you said not a lot of people are covering this, Reverend, because here's the deal. The reason we can cover this is because those folks who are listening to you right now, they are the ones who support this station.
We have them. Egberto Willies, so glad to have him here and all the information he's giving us. In the moments remaining, Egberto, we are diasporic people, you from Panama as well. Mm-hmm. It's like, and I was saying to someone last night, it's almost as if Ben Chavis and I were talking last night, the president of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, and the way everyone is talking about the Pope being a member of the diasporic family. It's almost as if, one of you agree, it's almost as if with all of the bad and alarming news, it's almost like an escape, something good to talk about, something else to be interested in besides Trump on a 24-hour news cycle, that we have a Pope. It would appear that everyone can claim. Now, I'm just learning at this moment about Creole culture. I've heard of it, but it's really been interesting learning about some of this. And what are your thoughts about this and how this is unfolding and people's fascination with it?
People want America to be what America says it is so badly. They want America. Look, remember, I'm from Panama.
Yes.
America was on a pedestal. I mean, we Panamanians, we knew about slavery. We knew about the genocide against the Indians, the indigenous. We knew about how the Chinese were treated. We knew about how the Irish were treated. We knew all those things. But what we also knew is that America was a government, a system that allowed itself to atone and had been atoning over the years. There's a lot left to atone, but it's been there. So we put America on that pedestal because there are a lot of countries who their bad stays bad. Their bad never gets better. We get better as a society because the salsa that we are, I don't call it a melting pot. Because we can all keep our cultures and enjoy other people's culture. That's a salsa. We don't have to melt into one thing. I love going for Italian food. I love going to some good soul food and having me the chitlins and all that good stuff. I love it. I love it all, right? I love going to get some French. I love it all. I don't want it all changed. And the rest of the world, Donald Trump is a shock. Donald Trump is all what America is not supposed to be.
Right.
I do believe that electing this Pope, who is a naturalized Peruvian citizen of Creole descent, whose mother was identified as Black, whose grandmother was identified as Black. I think that, and again, has that native in him as well. I think and I don't know whether he accepts that or not. We don't know how he grew up or anything like that, but we know that is his lineage, and you can't run from what your DNA says, right? You can't run from that. And I think the rest of the world said, and these cardinals probably said, you know what? We have to redeem America. You know, America is still one of the most important nations in the world. Why not put a Pope in there that let them live up to who they claim that they are? And you know what? I don't think they could have found a better one. I mean, at least they didn't choose Dolan. You know, at least they did choose the bishop from New York. They chose Leo the 14th. They chose right, and in so doing, I think they have redeemed, or rather, they have put us in a place as Americans where we can say, well, we can't be proud of this president, but my God, we've got the Pope.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Now, if and people say, well, is he going to acknowledge it? See, my thing is, he doesn't have to hold a press conference.
He is it.
He is it, right? And I'm gonna tell you something, Egberto. If you don't want it acknowledged, you scrub that stuff.
Yeah.
That stuff hit. Black Catholic Messenger had that 5 minutes after he walked out on the balcony.
Yes.
And then I Googled it. It was nothing.
Yes.
It was all transparent. So to me, that's a statement in and of itself. But now, as I'm interested in the culture, I'm learning more about it. Isn't it true that some Panamanians are a part of, or consider themselves a part of, the Creole family?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, if we go across the Americas, right, you will see the same thing because, again, the entire America was colonized by a different set of Europeans. But remember, these Europeans share something in common. After all, your kings and their queens intermarried, whether it be the German queen, the Dutch queen, all of these folks are one, and they were the colonizers of America and the Caribbean. So, let's see, I got 2 minutes. Let me tell you a 1 minute story when I came to this country. When I came to America, and I went to the University of Texas, where we did march against apartheid as well. I was one of those guys with the boots and the beret on, right? And it was funny because I was seeking, going around, and I found the African American Culture Committee, and I had to go join, right? I was in a lot of different groups, but I wanted to make sure and be in this Black group as well. So I joined the Afro American Culture Committee, and we were talking about Reverend Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And I said, yeah, I like Reverend Martin Luther King, but I have a closer affinity to Malcolm X because I was more in other words, I'm not going to hurt you, but if you hurt me, I'm going to hurt you back. Okay. And that's a kind of, I wasn't going to turn the cheek. And they attacked me. And the final blow was when they say, you are not one of us anyway. You're an import. And I had two choices: leave that room and just say, no, I'm not one of you, or acknowledge who I really was. I was one of them. Right. I am one of you. And you're not going to take that away from me. I didn't come to the Americas on a pleasure ship. I came on the same kind of ships you guys came. Mine just landed into a different place than yours. So we are the same. And they got an education that day because I had a pig head when I got to the United States. And I said, no, we are the same. And the other thing that I made sure to do, and I said, and by the way, I thank you, brothers, for being the leaders that have allowed me to come over here. Because again, the leaders of the movement were our folks right here in the United States, and some that migrated. Marcus Garvey and others migrated from the Caribbean. But this is the genesis of the change and the rephrase. I mean, Haiti, we have to put Haiti in a different box, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. But no, I mentioned Dr. Clark earlier, and he coined the term the African world. And we are the only reason I'm not Panamanian is where my folk got off the boat.
Right.
So we folks got, I'm not Dominican and you aren't Haitian.
Right.
This all depends on where folks got off. That's very, very important. My brother, I so appreciate you for being here. Again, tell everyone where they can find you every day.
Every day you can find me at politicsdoneright.com. I'm at Substack as well. politicsdoneright.com/newsletter is where you can actually pick up my Substack as well. So look, I appreciate the time that you gave me here to be on with you, Reverend. You know, I really respect you. I respect the work that you do, and I follow the work that you do.
And likewise, my brother, Substack's blowing up. He invited me to do a Substack with him. We're going to do that soon, one of these days, folks, probably in the next week or so. Once again, thank you to Egberto Willies. We love our brother. Stay tuned.
All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. I enjoyed that entire 30-something minutes that we were on. We're in Fund Drive, so I had to cut out all the Fund Drive portions of it to put it out here. But I hope you enjoyed that. And Michael Rudnin, you're well-schooled, man. You understand the different concepts very well. Paul Fleming says, breaking news, President Trump's June military parade in D.C. could cost $25 million to $45 million and involve dozens of planes, hundreds of army vehicles, and thousands of soldiers. We don't do that in America. That is things folks like these potentates like to do. We don't do that in America. It just shows that this guy's a little boy who just wants attention. A little boy that wants attention is who we have as a president. Paul Fleming also say, and just like that, TikTok is no longer a national security threat. A tiny Chinese company owned by the same people that own TikTok just bought $300 million of Trump coins. I told you it's the biggest fraud there is. Welcome aboard, John A. I see you now. Person joined. I got Pamela Daniels, independent voter 1, Susan Stockton, Margaret Kusley, Beverly Carlson, Sue Sarko, Roy Brower, Dennis Alvarado, Mary Lockhart, Linda Ewan. Linda, John A., why don't you guys drop me a line and tell me what city and state you're in? I missed most of the folks who came in at the beginning because, again, you know, it takes a while before. Substack has a way of slowing down how things get picked up. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I have another important video that I want you guys to take a listen of. This one has to do with Professor Scott Galloway and how Donald Trump in just 100 days, Donald Trump has all but destroyed America's credibility. All but destroyed America credibility. Anyway, we also have here, let's see, Margaret Kunsley is from Medina, Ohio. What part of Ohio is that? Medina, Ohio. I don't think I ever heard of Medina, but welcome very well here, Margaret Kunsley. Who else is from? Come on, folks, before I go to the video, give me where you're from, and I'll go ahead and post, I'll then do the video. Anybody else going to tell me the city and state? I kind of love to hear where folks are from. We're not only here in the United States, we're from all over. We have Barcelona, Spain. We have Paris, France, London, England, Toronto. We have folks from Ottawa. We have near Akron. Okay, got it. Near Akron. I know where Akron is. Absolutely. All right, folks, let's go ahead and do our other video while other people, I hope, put where they're from in the Substack chat. Let's go with this new video. Once again, Professor Scott Galloway nailed it. He points out that it took less than 100 days for Donald Trump to have the entire world lose all the faith they had in what America represents. And with that, it's going to cost us. I want you to listen to this little segment here, and then we'll take it on the other side.
Well, an insurrectionist who just did more to emasculate men than anyone in history. They will now have less buying power. They will now have a harder time picking up the tab or doing any of the things that traditionally, either as a provider, and I know you're right and talk a lot about that, being a provider and a protector is often associated with being able to pay for things. I mean, Donald Trump just made everything that we buy more expensive, and being a small business owner more out of reach and more difficult by making it harder to bring things in. How do you communicate the reality? I mean, and I agree with you. I mean, we threw in with a felon because things were too expensive, and now everything's about to get even more expensive. How do you solve for that?
It's a great question. I want to agree. I think the Republican Party has probably been the best marketers in the world. It's not easy for a party that largely represents the interests of the top 1% to convince the bottom 99 that they represent their interests. And if you look at the cuts being made to the government, they disproportionately affect red states. So the ability to be elected by a populace who will disproportionately register the downside of these policies is an incredible marketing trick. And you're absolutely right. Everything is about to get probably more expensive for everyday consumers. A tariff increases the price of goods coming in. 88% of toys come from China. If it's a 145% tariff, 90% of households are budget constrained. That means literally a third or half as many toys under the Christmas tree. And then the market for our products overseas declines because there will be reciprocal tariffs. These countries aren't, every country that's been levied with a tariff has responded with reciprocal tariffs. So our market for our products goes down. So what do you have? You have an economy that shrinks. In addition, what's even probably more damaging is that the American economy and stock market trades at a PE multiple of 26, meaning for every dollar of profits our amazing companies produce, we get $26 in wealth coming into the shareholders of those American companies. And the reason for that is a variety of things, ranging from the fact that America is more risk aggressive, we have more risk capital, we have great universities, we have incredible technology, but also we have consistency and we have rule of law. And those two things in just 100 days have been thrown out the window. And as a result, you're seeing essentially the flows of capital, both human and financial, into the U.S. that have benefited us tremendously in terms of low interest rates. And again, greater reward for that same dollar of earnings. Those rivers have reverse flows. And for the first time in 30 years, we have the greatest inflow of capital into European index funds, and interest in investing in America from institutional investors is at a 40-year low, meaning the cost of our debt or to borrow money abroad and the value and the wealth created by our companies will decline. So not only are things going to get more expensive, but our wealth is decreasing at a pretty decent clip. We get $26 of wealth for every dollar in earnings. Japan gets 18, Germany 22, China 14. I think you're about to see those things reverse. What does that mean? If your company's doing really well, it could double its earnings in the next 4 or 5 years. But if we experience that type of multiple contraction, the stock price and the long-term wealth of a lot of consumers and households that are directly or indirectly dependent upon the stock market, we'll see their wealth be stagnant or go down. This is kind of the worst of all worlds, an increase in the price of products and, generally speaking, the wealth and prosperity declining of American households.
Now, he nails it. But one of the most important things that the professor said was that how can a party whose policies decidedly support the top 1% in all its values, support wealthy people, leave little for the rest? Let me be clear here. Both Republicans and neoliberals care more about the top 1%, period. But at least the neoliberals give the impression, and they try to make it clear that they are not going to simply throw it all to the wealthy. They at least leave some space for the poor and the middle class. And then, of course, we have the progressives that actually force the hands of the neoliberals to ensure that the poor and middle class would get otherwise more than they would if we just left it up to these centrists and Republicans and MAGA, right? But the thing about it is, as the base of the new base of the Republican Party, which mostly comprise of the MAGA folks who are generally middle class or poor, how does a Republican Party with the policies that it's passing successfully market to these guys? I'll put it bluntly, they're damn good. And that is the one thing that progressives and Democrats need to learn how to do. And they can start with doing things like not central. We have Donald Trump putting the big plane out there for us to talk about. As I said yesterday, look, Donald Trump is a crook and a thug and got elected and got elected and the people knew who he was. So why should we concentrate on yet another thuggery, yet another theft, yet another? No, we don't need to do that. Yes, we need to mention it in passing, but start telling the Americans what we're going to do. So for every point that Professor Scott Galloway says there with regards to the middle class, working class, MAGA, propose, say, let them know what you are going to do to make it better for them. Okay? You're going to raise their wages. Their kids are going to be able to go to college tuition free. They are going to be able to get good health care no matter what. I mean, start telling and then tell folks how you're going to do it and the timeline that you're going to do it on. And guess what? People will eventually see it, but you have to do it. You have to get elected and make things happen. Not do what Democrats are famous for. Promise the world and then have to tame it down because your neoliberals and your centrists go ahead and completely sabotage what's going on. Are you listening to me, Mr. Manchin? Are you listening to me, Miss Cinema? That's what we're talking about. Absolutely what we're talking about. Hey, good point. E2247 says, millions of natural human persons have not yet recovered from the September 2008 U.S. economic and financial catastrophe of POTUS Bush. So now POTUS 47 is making it yet worse. Look, let me tell you, they have not recovered. In fact, all these crashes are used for the plutocracy to buy cheap, to take all your stuff away cheap. That's what they did with the 5 million homes that got foreclosed on. They just bought it up for cheap, kept it off the market, and as they kept it off the market, guess what happened? Prices for housing zoomed up. What we need to do is start penalizing these folks. Absolute penalization. And let me just say something about Doge, because I hear some of our right-wing brothers and sisters in the chat talking about Doge and what they found. Doge was a complete and entire failure for what they claimed they were going to do. Their claim was they're going to save first $2 trillion, then $1 trillion. Then they claimed to have saved $150 billion, which was not, nobody could find where this $150 billion that they saved came from. Then they released a whole lot of workers that they had to rehire again, which puts in a whole lot of inefficiencies, wasteful dollars for laying folks off and then having to rehire. So Doge was a failure, but it was a success for one thing. And I want all of you guys out here to know it. The success of Doge was that they were able to get your IRS data. They got your Social Security data. They got all the data on corporations in all these agencies, whether it's the CFPB or all the others. So those young punks went into your government, our government, with computers and downloaded your data, some of it going overseas because we have the IPs of numbers that dumps and dumps of data went through. You don't hear a lot about that because that is work for the Justice Department to do. But when the Justice Department is complicit in the theft of your data, what do you think is going to happen? Anyway, John A. says he is from Covington, Georgia. Pamela says, I grew up in Alabama. In 2021, I moved to Michigan. And let's see, Margaret Cuselli says, or Quensley says, if Social Security is privatized, we will also be victim of stock market with a dwindling return. Margaret, let's not put that if Social Security is privatized. Let's take command of what we can. We will not allow Social Security to be privatized. We will not allow it. And the changes that are being made to Medicaid, to SNAP and all these programs, in 2026, we must ensure that progressives win in a landslide, and that can then be corrected back to where it needs to be. And where it goes to, John A. says the Trump regime has spent more than ever by stupid, very costly pretending that money was being saved. Crooks, each and every, look, absolute crooks. Nothing was saved. They saved nothing. They stole our data. Remember that. Anybody tells you anything about Doge, remember, Doge was a failure. They stole your data, and the next administration that takes over will have to find ways to get some of the data to go ahead and convict those thugs who took your data. And that's what we need to do. That is what's going to have to be done. That is what's going to have to be done. And anybody, let me just tell you one other thing, my dear brothers and sisters. Anybody who tells you that privatization of social programs like Social Security or Medicaid or Medicare don't know math, and they can't accept reality. Medicare Advantage, which is nothing but private insurance for Medicare, is much costlier than traditional Medicare. That's a statement of fact. And let me just let you guys know one thing. It's math, right? If you add up all the costs that make traditional Medicare and all the costs that make Medicare Advantage, under Medicare Advantage, there are extra costs: advertising, shareholder dividends, bonuses for executives, high-paid executives, architecture, buildings, assets. All of those are additional costs for any social program that is privatized. It takes for somebody to tell you that 20% hit can actually be saved in efficiency. They are lying to you. The efficiency of Medicare is the cost of Medicare is about 3% max. The cost of Medicare Advantage, about 20%, if not more, when you calculate all the other robberies that occur. Don't please, don't dare fall for the con. Private sector handling public sector issues like roads, handling public sector issues like healthcare, it will always cost more. That's a statement of fact. And the numbers tell you. The numbers tell you, right? If you have additional costs, it's going to cost you more. But there are industries here to ill-inform you, to misinform you about cost and how private sector, it's more efficient. It's a complete and entire lie. But they are paid to tell you that so that you can somehow think the private sector is more efficient. The private sector is definitely not more efficient. I can tell you that as a statement of fact. All right, folks, we're coming close to the end of the program, and I'd like to invite all of you, those of you that are on Substack or otherwise, to please consider becoming paid subscribers of our newsletter. I tell you what, we do a lot. like I've mentioned before, we work very hard to make sure and get the progressive message out there. We ensure that we can do all of that. So what I'm asking you right now is to consider becoming paid subscribers of our newsletter. And how do you do that? Just go to politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. I'm putting it in both chats, both the Substack chat as well as the others. Now, we also have a catch-all. In other words, there are many different ways in which you can support the program. You can find all the different ways at politicsdoneright.com/support, politicsdoneright.com/support. I'm putting that in the chat as well. But the preferred way that we ask is to become paid subscribers of the newsletter. We need to get to just over 1,000 to get our badge changed, which would give us a little bit more penetration on the platform. So I ask you so kindly to consider becoming paid subscribers. After that, we can go ahead and with this, we can get more help, part-time help for all the work that we have to do. Bruce Pollard, welcome aboard, my brother. He said some of these Medicaid cuts won't touch Texas because we don't use it. But a lot of it will, Bruce, and we're probably going to have to enumerate that. I'll talk to Neil Aquino to talk about what's going to affect Texas. But Neil Aquino pointed out that with all the cuts that they're doing, 98% of housing assistance here in Houston comes from where again? The federal government. So it will affect us. All the different changes that they're making will affect us. So once again, folks, please support the program. politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. I got to get out of here. Love you all. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.